Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hello and welcome back to The Arrow. And today I have a guest who is a fellow mechanical engineer, Suyog Risbert, the fun Indian guy. You might know him if you follow him. If you don't follow him, please follow this guy. And he's a very versatile podcaster, as far as I know, but he's also too many other things which we ask directly to him. So, Suyog, welcome to The Arrow.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, please, first of all, introduce yourself to our viewers, everything you want to tell.
Good. So basically, my name is Suyog, and as Varun said, and I started my academic stuff with mechanical engineering, but then I ended up doing masters in service design in Milan. So right now, I work as a creative innovation strategy consultant on various different brand projects across the globe. But that's like my main work factor. So being a service designer, doing innovation stuff with brands. On the other hand, I run also a podcast for more than 3 years now. I think 100 episodes up. It's called Daily Ish Pod. It used to be called as the Fun Indian Guy podcast, but then to make it a bit more easy, we went for Daily Ish Pod. Run a YouTube channel called the Fun Indian Guy for last more than 4 years. On that, we do content around creativity, design, innovation, and lifestyle. And have been musician for a while as well. Played more than 100 concerts from streets of Italy to stadiums in India. Been on Mirchi Music Award. Played with Sachin Jigar. Played with Preetham on GMA Awards. So have been playing around for a while. And also started a company last year called Futuring Now, where we are doing innovation stuff for brands and startups and individuals. So yeah, basically, yeah, that's me.
Great. I mean, as I said to my viewers, that you do a lot of things, and I think when I saw your website where you have listed all the things you did, and I said, how do you get time to do all these things? Because I just have a job and I do this podcast as a what do you call it, hobby, passion, whatever, and
Right.
I do not get full sleep because I have to prepare, edit, and that take a lot of time. So. Uh, we'll talk about it, but who is Suyog Risbert personally, not professionally? Who is Suyog Risbert? And I'm asking this because people who start a podcast generally do it because they want to tell someone something or teach someone something or at least talk about something.
Right.
So, who are you philosophically? Better question.
Oh man, so I think it's difficult to answer. I never thought about that in that manner. What I've seen, the pattern which has been there since the beginning is I'm always interested in doing different things, and it drives a lot. Like I drive a lot of things with inspiration and motivation I get and capture from different experiences I gather. And on philosophical level, I just like to do things, and they should be interesting no matter what. And if we lose interest, of course I give it a shot, I change the methods and stuff, but it's not like very superficial, like okay, did this and left it right there. So I yeah, genuinely I'm curious about things, building things and creating stuff all the time, and making sure that it's interesting and fun, because if it's not fun, then I'm not, like, I tend to go away from it. That was the main reason why I did not take a job it was offered to me back in the day. Stayed on my own so I could build stuff and create impact on a larger scale. And that's what I'm pretty much doing. And podcast, when we talk about the podcast part of it, podcast started to basically have one more medium where I could share my thoughts, sometimes get guests and discuss some stuff. It was open ended in the beginning, it was more experimental, explorative, and now onwards we are kind of know what kind of stuff we do and kind of
Mm.
reactions we get. Funnily, it started because I wanted one more content piece on my YouTube channel, which had less editing. Because I was putting videos that time I was into vlogs and showing a lot of stuff which I was doing in Europe, and of course about design as well. But then I was like, how can we put 2 videos a week? And I was like, okay, podcast can be one way to do it, because I
Mm.
won't have to edit it on those lines where I do sharp cuts and do different B rolls, A rolls, and stuff. Which in podcast it takes time to edit as well. It's not like that
Yeah.
straightforward. But it is comparatively easy in terms of setting up the cameras, and so you just, once you have set up, you just sit and shoot. That's how it started. Ended up being like changed paths in between, and that has been the core again, experiments, and has been a great journey.
Yeah, I can totally understand, especially about editing a podcast. I remember when I was in school, teacher used to say, "Read 10 times, you will learn." And when you edit it, you hear same podcast with you with you in it 10 times, and then you can learn it by heart. So I know,
Yeah.
but it's interesting. I mean, as I said, I'm a mechanical engineer. I just have a creative bone, but I don't know how to do it. So I'm just exploring also. And
Right.
the main reason of me approaching you for this podcast today was I want to talk to a fellow podcaster. I
Mhm.
cannot say fellow. I mean, you are quite experienced than me. Who am I? I am just 4 months old podcaster.
It's still a podcaster, so
Yeah, it's a podcast. But I started this podcast, which obviously I tell my viewers many times, because I just thought that because of this pandemic, I was getting frustrated and bored and little bit depressed. And I said, I want to talk to people, and maybe sitting at home, I can learn something. And when I found you, I said that yeah, I think the fun Indian guy will be a good person to talk to about the podcast scene in India. But as you already told me that why did you start a podcast? So let's first start discussing the current situation of podcasts in India.
Mhm.
According to me, what I have observed is that apart from one or two podcasts, I do not have seen so many podcasts in India who are, famous.
Mhm.
And second thing which I came to know is that a normal mango people of India do not want to what do you call invest their 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, or if you are Joe Rogan, 5 hours in podcast. So what do you think about it?
Right, interesting. So I think from listening perspective, people have a lot of options. Some of the options are predominant because they have been doing it for a while. They have certain brand identity connected to them. Most of the big guys already had some huge YouTube channels. Then they went into podcasting. So that was like they already had some audience they could send to a different medium. Uh, I think it's yeah, like for sure when you listen to podcasts, it requires a lot of dedication because 1 hour is a lot and the person has 24 hours. I'm not let's assume he listens to stuff for 3 hours. So it's a very challenging thing to get into the earphones or get into the earphones of people, right? In terms of the Indian scene, I'm not well versed with it. It's just that I have my favorite podcasts, which I listen to globally or internationally or from Indian context as well. Most of the times they are driven by the guest because I follow some people and if they're talking to on some podcast, then that's my kind of direction towards it. That doesn't mean if I listen to a podcast by a super famous podcaster with my favorite guest, if it's good, then I stick around on that podcast or no, maybe not because it was like the it's a commitment, right? So it's need based for me. So when you talk about scene, it's clustered. You can't really understand what's happening. It's not as straightforward as YouTube or Instagram where you see stuff. Okay, these are the people, these are the followers, these are the kind of things these guys are making. It's not that clear. Also, you don't have enough time frame to hook people. Like they have to be part of your journey so they can stick around and invest their time on your podcast. That's for sure. But yeah, from charts and from everything, it's tough to understand. If it's also tough to understand if you're progressing or not because the audience can't keep fluctuating quite a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult world to navigate in, coming from the other platform context. Also the audience interaction is nearly zero unless and until you hook them up on some other platforms like Instagram or something. You don't get direct comments on podcasts as easy as a YouTube video, let's say,
Hmm.
post. So that gets a bit tough. It has been a personal struggle as well to understand what kind of impact are we creating. On my side, I'm happy with the conversations which I have. So that's a win situation because I got a lot of value talking to somebody. That person also enjoyed. So we had basically good time, which was digitally recorded. So we are sorted. That's already done. So I'm invested in it, and I got some good returns out of it. In terms of reaching out to new people, it weirdly connects to different people, and once in a while I get this long, like very long text messages on, or let's inbox in Instagram, thanking about talking about something, and that is interesting. And I was like, okay, if we make this conversation in my living room, only both of us will be getting some value out of it. If we just put it out there, maybe two more people or three more people will get some like really meaningful value out of it. So just like that, I keep putting it out there. And from measurement perspective, like I'm not really focused on it, because if you go into like stats and analytics and all those algorithm stuff, it gets tough. It gets really tough. What podcast can easily get you is, if you have a good track record and good like chunk of episodes put out, you can reach out to good people and have good conversations. So that's, you get footprint into different kind of networks.
Mhm.
Other thing is, because of some focused conversation with some focused guest, you get some kind of traction with people who you would like to interact with in some sense or some form. And basically you get footprint all around, and it becomes part of the whole ecosystem. Like in my case, the Fun Indian Guy has like a ecosystem. Like we as in, I write articles, we do content on YouTube, we do live workshop stuff, we do podcast. So it's like everything is interlinked. So once after a certain amount of time, a person invests in the brand of the Fun Indian Guy, and then they're hooked to it, that okay, like they get what I talk about, they understand the topics, then they always prefer like, okay, there is a YouTube video, I'll watch it. Oh, there is a podcast, I'll listen to it while I commute or while I work. So you grasp them into a bigger ecosystem. So I see a lot of social media campaigns done by a lot of people about how to run podcasts, how to get audiences, and all those things. But podcast is a very tough market to crack into if you are looking at it as a market to make money and make monetization and everything, because there are just millions of podcasts coming up, and it's a very easy medium to put stuff on.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's a long-term thingy. If your personal brand speaks, then it's gonna be very easy for you, because then you can talk to like right people from the audience perspective. But I'm exploring. It's not like I have cracked it.
I think the thing which I told you, that normally Indian people are not so much into podcasts, but while I said that, I again realized that actually India's podcast, Man Ki Baat by Narendra Modi, is the biggest podcast. Everybody listens to it every Sunday morning, and it lasts for around 1 hour or something. So people want to listen, but as you were saying that, yeah, it's a brand thing. If you have or made a brand or developed a brand, then probably you will get more viewers or listeners for that matter.
Yeah,
And
and about Man Ki Baat thingy, I think it's, again, it's not because people want to listen to a podcast or a broadcast on Sunday morning. It's because he's putting something out there and people are interested in it, right? So
mm,
it's not derived from the need that, oh man, what should I do? I need to listen to a podcast, and then you, okay, Man Ki Baat sounds good. It's more like, oh, Narendra Modi is doing that. So again, the brand thing comes
yeah,
first, and not the need of listening to something, right?
correct. Um, so one more thing which I was interested in, that there are several podcasts on Spotify. Mostly the Spotify podcasts are quite versatile, and there are some podcasts which are more into technology,
Mhm.
and there are some podcasts which are more into conversation.
Right.
And especially talking about yours, you have both of them.
Mhm.
Sometimes I just saw a recent video where you said that I am doing stand-up podcast, not stand-up comedy, but stand-up
Yeah.
podcast. So what do you think that the creativity in podcasts is
Mhm.
all about the conversation, or it's about how you are doing it, how differently you are doing that conversation?
See, I do it differently, let's say, because of the standard other people are doing. I do it differently because I like to do things differently. So it's not about like, because I just felt like, why can't I? Because I have observed, I like stage presence. I used to be on stage quite often. And the kind of chemistry I have when I'm on stage is, it's kick-ass. And it's also because of the chemistry you can build with the audiences, right? Just like stand up, you quickly understand how they're reacting to things, how they are, giving feedbacks, how they are laughing, clapping, whatever, and then you can bank on it, and then you change your performance, right? It's more like performance art. uh, but that also, if you take audience out of the picture, standing up also gives you a lot of freedom. You can move around, you can, it has a different feeling, that holding a mic in your hand and doing stuff, than just sitting here and talking on the microphone very focused, right? So I was like, might as well just sit, stand and just record. And it was fun for that bit. I wouldn't say I'll stick to it forever, But yeah, I do like to change things. Like if you see some podcasts from a couple of years ago, I used to do some outdoor podcasts where I sat at the lake and in Italy, and then I'm doing podcasts with like a lot of ambient sound of birds and uh, waves of the lake itself. So I also like to get into those things. Being a designer, I'm experimenting quite a lot from the audio, let's say world making perspective as well. Not directly in my podcast, but I'm exploring these topics for different projects. So in it, I'm very interested in giving experiences, and that's I try to bring some smaller elements in on the podcast. Now talking about focused, let's say technology or a domain focused podcast, uh, as per what all people say on YouTube and all these places where they are building channels in niche helps, because then you know, okay, when a notification comes from this particular podcast, they're going to talk about, let's say, AI, and it's easier for me. If I'm really into AI, then I'll follow that podcast, get some value out of it, and every time a notification comes, I know this podcast talks about AI. It's very clear,
Mhm.
very easy to understand. So that is a really good way to generate a good audience which is linked to AI. So that really helps, and that's why very niche podcasts are very important if you want to grow in specific domain. When your goals are also domain specific, like okay, I have an AI company, or I'm a startup, or I'm an incubator who incubates AI related startups, then it's good if I keep creating stuff on AI, because once in a while I can plug in that, okay, we do stuff in AI. If you want to know more, you can connect to us, we can help you set stuff. So that's very beneficial in terms of using podcast as a revenue stream, or as a, let's say, medium to get some more leads and stuff.
Mhm.
And niche always helps, right? Even if you consider yourself as a listener, you'll tend to follow some podcasts which are really specific on the topic, because you know what to expect. It's not like I'll invest 1 hour to understand what he talks about, right? It's like, okay, 1 hour AI into banking sector, cool, sold, listening, easy. When it gets conversational, if you have guest, then yes, guest traffic is there. If you're doing it by yourself, then you have to be a bit creative. Again, then it potentially links to the brand and not to the piece. So it's a different kind of equation. You have to also think about people discovering podcast by the name of the podcast and the kind of branding the podcast has, and then the episodic discoveries, right? And episodic discoveries are where you have special guests and very specific niche topic. So those are some of the elements in it. And Yeah, pretty much like, and once in a while dropping into different networks of different people, so people get some teaser that, okay, you do such things. So if they're interested, they stick around. And yeah,
I
it needs commitment from the audience for sure.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about different niche, I think being versatile in your podcast is also a niche, I guess, because the way I am trying to do is that I want to talk to everyone from every field. I
Mhm.
mean, I had an astrophysicist in the past, and now I have a podcaster and a mechanical engineer. So I work in every field. But then it depends that what your real plan is. If you want to, as you said, that broadcast your own brand, or you want to talk to people and learn yourself.
Mhm.
So I think that the podcast I am doing is that I am doing it to learn myself.
Mhm.
What is the purpose of your podcast? Are you trying to build up your brand, or you are trying to publish the things which you have achieved in your other avenues, professional
Uh,
avenues?
Right. So, for me, the podcast is the ecosystem piece, because we do medium. I do content on different fronts, so it
Hmm.
adds one more piece to the whole picture. Uh, I do try to get into conversation with interesting people once in a while, because it's just fun to talk to somebody on some interesting topics. I These days I try to keep it in creativity, design, innovation, and those particular fields. So even if somebody comes from a very specific industry, but we'll talk potentially about the maybe the creative side of it or design side of it, or did that person innovate in that particular sector, because those are three like main 3 4 building blocks, which I should also minimize them. Not four is still a big number, but those I consider as a building block, and that helps me navigate the conversation. What happens when you do a conversation, according to me, what happens when you do multiple different sector conversations, just because like you like to have a conversation, which is good. Like as you said, if you set the expectation that you want to have a good time and understand different things from different sector, you're sold. from audience perspective, it gets tough for audience to follow you unless until they know you personally. Again, if you have strong brand identity, I'm not saying brand as a channel or
Yeah.
influencer brand, you as a person, if you have a certain brand, even if you're working in a company, if few people really enjoy your company, and company as in being around you and talking to you and conversation, then you have a certain brand, personal brand identity, right? So if it's linked to you, then it's easy for the audience to follow. But for a third party audience who doesn't know you, it might get tough, because again, they have better options, right? So they can quickly jump to a really huge level, amazing podcaster with amazing guests, with
Mm.
great production level, great videos also, like even from the YouTube video perspective, like good cameras and good sets. So then it's conscious decision made by me, right? Like whether should I watch to this guy and invest my 30 minutes, 45 minutes with this person, or go with somebody who has a good track record, that the
Who
potential,
knows?
yeah, potential of getting disappointment is less there. So
Yeah.
that, from audience perspective, I would make that decision. So those are some of the things we have to consider. So in the beginning, if you keep it, not saying you go ahead and keep it, I'm just saying in general, if you keep it a bit narrow, that okay, this is what you expect from this, then it's easier to get these early people
Mm.
in your community, or let's say in your audience or target audience sector. And then after that, then once you know people like what you do, then you start experimenting and diversifying. But to have the good footing, if you want to get audience, then I think you have to be not extremely specific, but bit specific about what to. When I see a thumbnail on Spotify's latest podcast, because I subscribe to your podcast, I should know what I'm gonna get out of it before I
Yeah.
make that commitment. So those are my observation. I'm not saying this is how it works, but yeah, after having 100 sets of samples, I kind of know what works and what doesn't work. And
Mm.
sometimes some surprising things work. Sometimes algorithm catches something. So after 3-4 months, suddenly a long 5-minute episode, mini episode, which I did about some specific thing just popped. But that is like depends on the keywords and stuff.
Yeah. This algorithm, I think it's a juju sort of thing. Nobody knows what it is, but everybody talks about it. Have
Correct.
you found or cracked the code for algorithm,
Uh,
especially YouTube or Spotify?
YouTube to know for sure. And I stopped giving attention to the algorithm bit long ago. It's not, doesn't mean I'm ignorant about it, but I'm not driven by the algorithm, because when I'm not entirely dependent on my content stream, I can experiment, right? And experiment is what makes it interesting to
Mm.
do it for long term. My first year on YouTube was about, oh shit, I'm not getting views, I'm not getting likes, I'm not getting enough thingies. And it's not like it has increased or it has improved over the years. It's still kind of on the same level. But my point of view, I tried to change it. Okay, like why am I doing it in the first place? Okay, this is why I'm doing it, and I have already generated tons of value, not through the YouTube channel, but because of having the YouTube track record. Uh, and that could open a lot of doors for me already. So I was like, okay, it's already like massive win, and don't really have to focus on the numbers. And now I'm just trying to understand, like I've created 185 videos, how can I use that, or how can I still polish? So what I did last week, took a very conscious, very strong decision. I made about 50 videos, 50 to 60 videos unlisted. So there, if you go and find, you will not find those videos. Was a very tough decision, because like 50 videos is more than what, more than 25 or 30%, right, of the
Mm-hmm.
content which I made for last 4 years. Like a lot of sweat, a lot of efforts. It was a tough decision, but I had to take it, because I think what is happening is, because initially I kept it open ended, and it was like more whatever I like I'll do. And a lot of music content was there, a lot of vlog travel content was there, a lot of Marathi English mixed content was there. That was cool in back in the day. I learned a lot, but that's already a good thing. But what is happening right now is that my most watched videos on my channels were the music video, the street performance which I had in Milan. And still till date, that was the first video which I put on the channel. After 4 years, that's the most watched video every day. So what is happening now, because people are liking that, people are subscribing to the channel, because I also saw the subscription analytics, and I look at these are the couple of videos through which people are subscribing. People are coming on my channel, and it turns out, man, this guy talks about creativity, innovation. I have no clue about it. Also, the song which I was singing was Marathi, so a lot of Marathi people are coming, and they're like, he's not even talking Marathi. So why am I subscribing to this channel? And that's why I got good subscribers, but then the retention rate is not good. People are not interacting with the content, and then YouTube algorithm thinks that okay, this channel doesn't work, maybe they're
Hmm.
not making good content. And once in a while, every week I'm getting this one comment everywhere that, oh, this content is so good, the nicely produced good videos, why this guy is not getting views? And I'm like, okay, I know why I'm not getting views, but that also pinches you in a bit. It's not like I need tons of views, it's not the goal. But that's why I said, okay, 50 videos are out which are not on the topic of creativity, design, innovation, lifestyle. They're unlisted. If in future I can open them up again, so they will still have the same record and they'll still be in the channel, but right now they are not visible. Now I'm expecting in next 5 to 6 months YouTube will relearn the algorithm again, and then potentially send the people on my channel who are into creativity and design and innovation stuff. So that was very important to do, and that's why I used the medium in the beginning to experiment, understand the craft, how to make videos, because I started with the iPhone back in the day in Paris and shot my first vlog, edited it for the first time, and got better at it again, like because of the iterative process of doing it again. And now it's like, okay, let's filter. Now I know what I do, and now I know what I want to do and what kind of things I want to get out of it for now. So let's just filter, and it's fine if we lose subscribers. Similarly on podcast also, I kind of have now, as I said, those 3 4 building blocks which keeps the identity of the podcast rolling,
Hmm.
so that people know what to expect in the pool of tens and thousands of podcasts which are coming out.
So I think that nowadays this term podcast is becoming a little bit murky, because I have seen many people who have their own business,
Mhm.
and they talk to their own people. You know what I mean by their own people? That other CEOs from other companies who want to
Right.
collaborate and like that. And earlier the podcast was like just like a conversation, but now it has become a serious thing. It has become a serious thing, like you want to grow as a brand, or you want to talk to people who are already quite established, and so on and so forth. But when you were saying that, okay, I unlisted this and I just put it for one thing, which is creativity and designing, uh, what do you expect from your future? That are you going to stick with it because you made a decision like this, or one day if you become a brand, then you will again go become versatile?
Yeah, so right now I'm thinking the channel from which I'm putting out stuff, these 3 4 things are the ones which I'll stick to. If I want to create music now onwards, now we have reached a certain level where I'm not so much into music these days, that not practicing a lot, not making stuff, not jamming with the bands and stuff, that's fine. But I know if I want to put out music now, it will be at certain level, that will there will be a lot of efforts put into it, lot of care put into it. It will be definitely will have a certain quality, right? And if I'll put that much effort into it, then I'll open a different channel for that, because then it
Yeah.
just gets easier. And already have Spotify profiles and everything, so a lot of things. Excuse me for a second, getting a call. It's fine, right? I'll just text and I'll jump back. Right. We were talking about.
Yeah, your another channel if you want to go into music.
Yeah. So we already have Spotify profiles and everything, right? Where we can put out music content. And yeah, figured out it's not like a decision based on last 2 3 months. It's a decision based on last 2 years of content. And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
these are the things. And even the businesses which I want to build, the customers and the clients I work with, they fall into the similar kind of a thing. So that's why the decision was. And as I said, if I want to diversify, I might open different channels or use different mediums for that. And might keep my Instagram to be still versatile, because that is like a very
Hmm.
personal thing. And that's why I just opened the Instagram for the podcast and then the company, so we can have specific stuff there. But it's just adding too much work because there's too many things to handle.
Yeah, that's why I was amazed by when I visited your website that you do a lot of things.
Mhm.
And last question about this topic of podcast is that since the pandemic, apparently Zoom became a thing.
Mhm.
And when Zoom became a thing, this podcast, online video podcasts, also became a thing. And now everybody is doing it.
Right.
And once upon a time, podcasts were like two people sitting in front of each other, or walking, or like the David Letterman show. It's also a sort of podcast when he
Right.
visited people's houses. So, what do you think? Is it good that people now do it online on Zoom, or do you think that the real conversation happens when people are sitting face to face or interacting in person?
Cool. So I think both has both the things have their own perks, pros and cons. In terms of the kind of conversations you have, Zoom ones are a bit more focused because you're like, okay, a question is being asked and then you have to answer that. So that's like a bit more focused. When you are in person, you get passive things like the personality. Okay, this guy is just jumping around and it's a bit more active and you can make jokes about it depending on the kind of podcast you're making. But you have these other elements involved, like just like the stage presence and doing stuff without audience in front of you. So
Mhm.
that gets you different chemistry, different feeling, because it won't be like the person just walked in and sat and started recording unless and until it's a very important person who doesn't have time. You will chill first, maybe have a coffee, you will set the podcast, set the mic. So you kind of build a different kind of relationship if you are really doing it with a person who you never met before, right? Or if the person is the person you have met before, then it's again different, again energy altogether. So that definitely has a benefit when you can do it in person. On the other hand, with Zoom you can connect with people across the world, so that opens up different possibility because you could talk to potentially people from anywhere on the planet. So that broadens the scope. So perks of both, I enjoy doing both. In terms of production, I think when you do it in person, you have to have like a good set, because
Mhm.
what is happening, a lot of people have started to do it and a lot of more content is already there. So having good production is a must. Of course, not for the person who's really beginning. I wouldn't say go invest a lot of money on the gear and stuff, but good production goes a long way. Like if I have two options, one conversation recorded on Zoom with extremely high quality of conversation, and if I see other video which is done on really good cameras with really good microphones, nice set and everything, but potentially maybe not so good quality of content, from audience perspective, I might go to the second option because the production level is so high, I feel good, right? And
Mhm.
everybody is now getting used to seeing good stuff because other bigger people are doing good stuff. So that definitely makes a huge difference. But on the other hand, I have also found myself when I'm, as I said, for example, Kunal Shah is one guy I follow quite often because I like his take on the cultural aspect of India and how he looks at all this phenomena and capitalism and all those things. I don't mind even looking at a very, very poorly done Zoom recording of a conversation because I am invested in the person. So that's why I will make a conscious decision. Okay, I don't mind going ahead and listening to this. But in terms of quality, like if you are a producer of a podcast, then I would say try to not like step by step enhance, because quality is it's given now. It's like a lot of the sustainable brands, fair trade is given. You don't have to talk about that we have fair trade in our product, right? Like that should be the case. So that's how the quality goes a long way, and
Mhm.
that's like underlying thing. That's a good foundation. That's why whenever I tried to do Zoom recordings as well, except couple of them, usually on the both sides there were cameras rolling. So then I had to do a lot of work of editing my footage, their footage, getting the footage on internet because it's like hundreds of GB of just videos. So those extra efforts were put into it, but to just make sure that the quality stays good. Because if it's a 1.5 hour episode, the last one which we put with the dope coffee roasters, if somebody is going to invest 1.5 hour on my channel, might as well give them a good time, right? So but again, it's a gradual change, but a change you should always consider if you want to be in this for a long time.
Absolutely. So, I think the next thing I want to ask you about your music, and yeah, start with the origin story of your music. When did you start, and uh, your experiences while performing it in internationally, especially in Europe? And I know the music scene in Europe. How is it? And
Yeah,
people stop midway just to listen if someone is singing quite good, and
yeah.
even if it is minus 10 degrees. So, tell me about it.
So music has been very interesting. So when I was a kid, I used to just play random stuff in the kitchen and vessels and stuff. It's not like something different. A lot of kids do it, but I used to do it quite often, and I had that nag for it. And then when there was like festivals and the drums playing outside and stuff, I used to just dance was the first thing because it was about rhythm, and then I just was into the element. So my parents thought like maybe we should put him into a tabla class, not like the coolest thing for a kid, because tabla is very disciplined. Like there are like steps to follow and there's a curriculum. It's not like you can go and express whatever you want to. To get to the expression level in tabla, you have to learn, you have to do a lot of homework. So anyway, when I was in second grade or second standard, I was about 8 years old. My parents took me to a local tabla guy, because I come from a small town called Dapoli in Maharashtra, Ratnagiri district on the west coast. So it's a small town that also has a perk of being from a small town, but we can talk about it later. I could go to this tabla guy. He first said he won't accept me because my hands were too small. Like the 8 years old have very not so strong hands for hitting tabla. But he said like give it a try. So I played Nashik Dhol kind of rhythms on the tabla which was in front of me, and then it's like okay, send him twice a week. So I started learning tabla for 6 years. So I got into this rhythm kind of a thing in a bit structured manner, and then after my 10th, when I came to Mumbai for my college, I wanted to learn drums, and in my town I couldn't because there were no drums and drums classes. So when I came to Mumbai, I started learning drums for 2.5 years, and then I got interested more into the percussion side of it. And luckily, I got introduced to Tawfiq Qureshi ji, who is like younger brother of Zakir Hussain. Tawfiq Qureshi ji is very quite famous in when it comes to percussion. He plays djembe, the African instrument, and he plays Indian classical music on djembe. So it's a very amazing fusion kind of a thing, and he plays a lot of different, very weird looking instruments. So I had seen him a lot of times on TV, and I was like, man, this is so cool. He used to do beatbox and everything as well. And he also had a band called Mumbai Stamp, or has a band called Mumbai Stamp, where they play trash cans and do whole performance on trash cans and drums and barrels and the Asian paint kadabbas. So I just quite fascinated. Got to meet him after one of the concerts of his, went backstage, talked to him and stuff. And then turns out he also teaches. And then for 4 years, I was at his institute learning djembe and world percussion and stuff. Again, that was also quite disciplined because as he is a son of Allah Rakhaji, a lot of Indian classical, they what do you call it, North Indian classical music was involved. So very disciplined as well, but had a very amazing feeling that you could see these different instruments and play them. And then while on the side, I started playing with bands, created my own bands, started performing as a session artist or freelance musician for different bands and stuff. So that was a good journey altogether, but got introduced because of the whole network effect. I got introduced to really good people, could play on amazing platforms and stuff, and could build a certain portfolio, which was sufficient to build a whole music career. Because when I was in India, I already had 80 concerts with being on TV so many times. Like even our band was featured as the band of the week on VH1 Music Diaries for 1 week. Then I played on Aaj Tak with Amitabh Bachchan ji, where he was singing, I was playing guitar, and he was singing, and there were like 20 of us. So got some good exposure everywhere, and the experience was quite interesting. And I always cherish those parts, and that was also the one of the key elements why I started thinking about going into creative career more than the mechanical career. And that's how I started to explore design fields and everything. And while I was finishing my engineering, started preparing for my design stuff. And that's how the whole music career was. And then ended up being in Europe, always fascinated by the street performances. So got into that. So it's not a very easy thing to do that as well. You have to have a license to play on the street, depending on the every municipality has their own rules. So you have to have license. You have to have booking of a place in Milan. So you can't just randomly go anywhere and sit and play. You have to have booking. So if police comes, and police they do come, they ask for if you have a booking and a license. You have to show them the PDF, and they're like, okay, cool, play. That was interesting. I did it like 20 to 25 times on the street. It requires a lot of hard work. It's not as easy as it looks. A lot of logistics. So of course you don't have your own car or a scooter in Europe. So you have to go in public transport, carry heavy speakers and everything, set it up, play for 2 hours, out of which sometimes there will be nobody in front of you. So still keep playing. There are winds, it's cold, it's too hot. It's just crazy, but the experience is definitely worth experiencing. And my last I actually came across a lot of different people. Like there was this one old guy who was a bit drunk. He kept paying me, and I was like, he was just requesting songs and songs and songs. And then he apparently had a girlfriend or a wife. I don't know. It's quite middle aged. man. So he asked me to put his wife's name or partner's name in that song. I started crying once I started singing. Then there was one day when there were some mentally challenged kids or special kids who were on a city trip of Milan. So they were just passing through different monuments and stuff. And I was sitting at a very important monument called Duomo, which is like a city center of the Milan city. So I was sitting there and playing, and the whole group of 20 to 30 people just stopped, and for next 45 minutes they were just dancing. And most of the times I also play Hindi and Marathi songs in between. they just they went crazy, and it just felt so amazing. So gathered some interesting experiences. And my last concert, I had invited my classmates, so about 20 people showed up in front of Duomo at night. I didn't plan it to be the last one, but that happened to be the last one. But we kind of ended on a good note because there were 20 people sitting down in front of the church while I was playing. 40 more people joined, so it was like 60 people and became like a small concert. So had some cool stuff. And then when I moved to Berlin, I also made like a small album with a Polish DJ there, and also played a concert at a really big festivalish place, where I played drums and I beatbox and I looped electronic music, while some Syrian refugee rappers were rapping. So I had some interesting experiences. Definitely, once I go back or when I go back, I would explore that side of it as well. But now I have some good experiences to cherish when it comes to music. I think you're mute.
You must be getting goosebumps while playing in front of Duomo, because I can imagine what a cool place it is, and how it must be like. And you are one of those cool guys, because whenever you go around in the city and you will see some guy with, yeah, like you, long hair and a beard, playing guitar, and someone is playing drums on the side. Yeah, it's a sort of enjoyment also. I guess
Yeah.
you must be enjoying a lot and having a lot of fun doing that. um, what is your plan for the future then? Are you planning to make your own band or something, or you are just going to collaborate?
In music, I don't have solid plans because now that is not like a primary thingy which I'm doing. I have a band called Bards of the East, which with which I have played a lot of shows when I was in Mumbai. Our band it still exists, though we don't put out so much music. But we started recording album back in 2015 with 10 songs, which we didn't finish. So now we are into conversations of finishing those. So that's interesting. Um I would like to learn production a little bit, just for fun of it. So I'll focus on that. And right now, because I am in Mumbai for this couple of months, I can catch up with my band. So we were jamming the other day in a jam room. My bandmate came here yesterday, so we were doing some jams with guitars and stuff. So right now, I'm just experimenting. Big level plans are there. I would like to do like a huge audio experience stuff, but not right now. There are like bucket list ideas are too many. So when the opportunity is right, the time is right, or when things look okay, we can just engage because we have things to do. It's just that the timing needs to be right. So that's all. So yeah, have some interesting plans. Also clubbing music with food. I had a discussion and a plan with a Italian chef back in the day, how we can merge these two things together and stuff. So definitely interesting. I even got to shoot, because I make videos. I got to shoot some jazz festivals in Italy and could chill with Grammy Award winners and all, because I had the green pass and I can access everything,
Hmm.
and got in really good connection with the jazz festival. They hosted my parents when they were in Italy for the festival, and we had like a villa booked for ourselves. So it was just very, very nice dynamic. The people I really not worship, but I follow die-heartedly. Some Grammy Award winners like Jacob Collier and all. I could just interact with them. I could shoot their whole concert and stuff, which wouldn't have been possible if I was in India, because in India you can't really reach out to these amazing people.
Hmm.
There you can just walk in and play with stuff. Like there is this amazing guitarist called Guthrie Govan. He plays in a band called Aristocrats. He also plays with Hans Zimmer. So quite crazy level guitarist. He had a very chill concert in Milan in a jam room where we went. Not many people because it was a small place, but it was so authentic and so casual that after the concert we chilled with the guy for 2 hours. Me and this other friend of mine. I was collaborating with her on some music project, and three of us were just chilling. Like it will never happen in Mumbai, because in Mumbai the circles are different, and it gets a bit like whenever these amazing, very famous musicians come in. you can't really access them unless and until you belong to really good positions in the industry. So you are also invited, and then you can chill with them in the after party. But you can do these things there. So it was quite interesting to club like music and videos and the whole thing together.
I yeah, you were saying correctly that in India the celebrity level is more than the talent level, I guess, because people go after this that particular celebrity, not the music per se.
Mhm.
And what is the genre of your band, or you particularly? What sort of music do you like or you play?
Uh, Genre is again, it's not very fixed because we also in our band also we used to experiment a lot
Nothing
because
is
of
fixed with you, right? You go and
no
touch all the waters, like
no
you were
fixed.
saying you were having chef and
Fixed thing is the experiment and
Mm.
presented in a way that it feels it's connected to everything. Like I try to do bunch of things, but at the end of the day, I try to bring them all together and bring it home. So it's like, okay, then it becomes part of the whole ecosystem, as I said. In terms of music, I think because our band had four people who used to produce, so every track was produced by somebody else, so it had a different flavor. So that's there. In my right now, I'm listening to a lot of lo-fi stuff. I'm listening to a lot of hip hop stuff, some pop stuff as well. In terms of making music or playing, because I come from a percussion side, drum side, I like a lot of rhythms and beats and loops, looping stuff, and all those things. So those are kind of my likings. But they keep changing, as I said. But it's just interesting to keep changing. Otherwise, yeah. If you want to have a certain success in music industry, stick to a genre, create a body of work so that you bring people together, so that then on the basis of those people you can go ahead and experiment, because that way the journey is more efficient. I'm not saying you shouldn't explore since the beginning, it's just the journey becomes more efficient. So that would be the case anyway for any kind of creation. uh, Personally for me, it's quite open-ended. As I said, I'm not actively doing it right now, so all good. I have plans in terms of innovation stuff and the futuring now the company stuff, but not in terms of music.
Good, you gave me a leeway. Let's talk about future now. And actually, I just know what I know from your website. And please introduce me with the future now, what you are doing in it, how you are doing in it, and all before that, why you started it, and how did you think about it? I know you are versatile. You must have hundreds of ideas because of it. So let's start futuring now.
So basically, as I said, my master's are in service design. That means I work on any service designing project, redesigning new service, existing services, creating new
So
services.
wait, you have to start again. I think the network went bad for a little
Yeah.
bit.
So
Now,
as I said, I come from a service design background. That means I worked on innovation projects, made be like new services from scratch or redesigning existing services. Services can be in any sector, from healthcare to policy making to government design to social innovation, doing stuff for community. So I've been on different spectrums, and I can be in different spectrums, and that's the beauty of it. Goes with my overall brand. So because of that, I could work with really cool brands in Europe. Like my first working experience was with Porsche, the car company, for their consulting branch, or let's say a wing I was working on. Because of working with Porsche, I was introduced to a lot of Volkswagen Innovation Group projects, because we were working on the global stuff for all the brands which are under Volkswagen. So Audi and Lamborghini and all those cool brands like Bentley. In my particular sector, I was working on new mobility, so basically future mobility solutions, and was again merging a lot of video making with my design skill set. So I ended up making a methodology about how to use video making and service design for future and the innovation. Ended up creating 6 future videos of concepts for Volkswagen Group about autonomous vehicles and different things, because services are difficult to explain as well. They are difficult to build, but they're also difficult to explain. So when I come to you and say, okay, in 2030, this is what we are going to do, it's very hard to picture because there are stakeholders involved, there are different people are involved. It's not really product oriented, there are experiences and stuff. So we use video making to explain what happens, so we can explain the concept very fast, and that is primarily what I worked on. Because of that, I ended up being in different positions and places in Germany, in Italy, where I could do it more and more for different fancy companies. And I happen to be in a lot of different innovation labs where like real innovation happens, like sci-fi looking stuff where bigger screens and stuff, like cool gadgets lying around, and you do a lot of amazing, interesting things which can potentially have a huge impact on the world. Because imagine you would create some good service for Volkswagen. Volkswagen has a crazy reach across the globe. So potentially the creations which you are making will have some impact on the whole thing. Because of that, I got good experience of doing innovation, coming up with new concepts, not only about the videos but really polishing and making new concepts and coming up with different amazing ideas based on the user research and all those things which are from my professional background. And then I was like, why can't we create an online innovation lab, because the pandemic was going on, where I could really create a space to help individual startups and corporates doing innovation things. And that's how the Future Now started last year during the pandemic. And within a month we helped around 19 or 20 startups in India, helping them build new concepts basically. And from that I was just experimenting different things while I was working on different projects for, again, bigger brands about future concepts. And then I was like, okay, let's use this medium or a platform to create some futuristic offerings or very specific offerings. So since last 6 months we are experimenting and exploring new ways of doing things. So we have a bunch of interns working, and we are just pushing needles on different levels. So we are not really right now focused on getting customers and finding the right offerings and stuff. That's not the concern, because I'm able to drive this business with my other projects, so I don't have to worry about making money. So right now we are taking sweet time just to understand different things, and we are going more into the futuristic sci-fi-ish approach, and more on those lines where you create like really future concepts for people. And now we are just exploring the part where we have, so how I work with is I have a bunch of interns and they get different goals, and they just go on exploring what they think about that particular thing, and then we do touch base and we exchange ideas. So that's how we are doing Futuring Now thingies right now, and stopped doing workshops for a bit through it. As I said, want to understand a deeper thingy, because basic design thinking and all those things you can easily do. There is certain demand for it in the market. You can go to different companies and run design thinking workshops with the employees and stuff, which where we were thinking we would go. But for long term perspective, it's not very deep for me, because it's easy to do. Definitely a lot of value can be created through it, but I would not take that as a challenge, because we can do a bit more meaningful things. So we are just trying to figure out what other things can we do, and keep exploring, and then at certain point we'll close it and bring it to an offering. So that's what we are building a future.
Sorry. Explain to me a bit. What do you actually mean when you say the word concepts in
So
this? With
right,
an
so
example, maybe. Yeah.
So let's talk about autonomous vehicles. So you know that 2025 there will be autonomous vehicles coming in. So what kind of experiences can you give inside the autonomous vehicle? Because there will be new possible business models coming along, right? Depending on which company you are working with. So if you are, let's say, a food company, maybe you can have food experiences already in the car. Maybe the car comes with the food. Can be different things you can think about, right? So because of a service design background, we have methods where you structure the ideation. It's not like open-ended. You know why you're doing certain things, why you're creating such certain concept, what is the basis of it, where the reference data came from, where the research came from, what are some of the other companies doing in the thing. So we do bunch of things until we reach the, let's say, first draft of the concept. So a lot of
Mhm.
things go into it, but you basically explore different possibilities of what you could do in 2025 with autonomous vehicles and food. And then you come to a concept level where you say, okay, maybe the food comes in the car, and car picks you up and you eat the food in the car with the whole experience, because now you can create experiences inside the car because you have isolated environment. So then you come to a concept level and then you say, okay, this is the concept, this is the scenario, these are some of the things you can build, and that's where you leave the project. You can also go into the execution, so creating prototypes and testing them with the people, and then making it better, and then finally delivering the project. Again, depends on the brief of the company, but concept means basically this, like using the existing data to understand where else we can take the stuff, which is actually the instantaneous design thinking happens from the problem, right? What problem you're facing right now as a company. You have maybe, you don't have customer retention or something. Then you go deeper into it. What are some of the reasons why it is happening? And then you come up with concept. For future concept, you still are connected with your existing stuff, but you let go a lot of things for a second, and you think like, okay, what happens? And you go to like this fictional world, so that you can come up with some things which are more strong and not so obvious that okay, Spotify has this and this is what Spotify would do next. Those things are easy to understand. But when you say okay, how about Spotify into what can we call it? When Spotify becomes an experience company where the music is not only about the audio but also visuals and maybe smart lights in the home and stuff. Those are the things where you're pushing the boundaries, right? This was
Mhm.
again 2 3 years, not so distant. But then you set the context so that you think about the crazy stuff and then create some concepts which might not be action items per se, won't be the things you should build, but definitely things you should think about so that you can go into certain directions. So those are the things we're trying to build.
And how much science is used in this, or it is just based on imagination, creativity, and that sort of thing?
So we define a challenge first in terms of what we are trying to do here. It's not like extremely open-ended. Then we go into research phase where we do research, where we go into the different, let's say, academic papers, new research papers. We go into user research, understanding people, doing interviews with people, doing interviews with experts. Then we also go into benchmarking, so understanding what other companies are doing in the particular domain. We also go cross domain where we go and see other companies who are not in my competition but still working on similar stuff. So just understanding, so grasping, downloading as many insights as possible, and then that is like your expand. So you have a very classic way of explaining design process which is called double diamond. So these are like two diamonds, right? So you start with a challenge where it's very specific, you go into the exploration, so you diversify your scope where you are going for quantity and not quality, and then based on all these research and interviews and stuff and expert discussions, then you start narrowing it down again. Okay, what can we
Mhm.
do with this? Okay, this is what the research says, and then you bring it down to again a very specific thing. Then you're like, okay, this is what is promising, and then you expand it, and that's the part where you ideate, and then where your creativity is based on the research and all these things we came to know. These are all the things we can do, and then there you go crazy. And after going crazy for certain time, then again you start filtering and coming back to a one concept. So these are like two diamonds, where like research and everything is involved. So it's not like randomly sitting at the window and saying, okay, what if Spotify has this? No, these are the things which we know from the market. Based on this, what should we do in 2020 30 for Spotify? So those are some of the, we have methods behind it. Of course, it's not open ended, and this is how most of the times bigger companies work. Like Google has their own framework for doing this. uh, Apple has their own framework, Uber has their own frameworks, and we work with those frameworks as well.
I see. One more point which came to my mind was that I understand how you can help startups or brands or companies for that matter, but there is also a mention of helping individuals. How is that happening?
So right now we are not focused as a company on that matter, because we are now thinking of the brand side a bit more or corporate side a bit more. But individuals, what we did last year is we ran also a lot of idea kickstart or quick start experiences for a week, where individuals could, because we nowadays everybody wants to get into entrepreneurship, and a lot of people have cool ideas and they think those are the ideas which can create a major impact. But ideas are not so easy, right? There needs to be a lot of reasoning behind it, and then even having an idea is not going to make any difference. You have to really go and execute stuff. So we had 1 week experiences created for individuals who had ideas, basic ideas, or let's say who had figured out some problems in the world and wanted to create something. So we helped them throughout a week to come to a concept level idea, which was tested by some people as their target audience, not in a big sample, but some idea from real world and some feedback from the real world, so they could draft the ideas better. So we did
Mhm.
that for those kind of things for individuals.
And what else are your plans in the future? As you already told me that a little bit planned, but uh, are you thinking about expansion or creating your own brand through it? How is it going?
So right now I have own brands. So Futuring now has a certain brand footprint across the globe, and people recognize it. Not everybody, but some people on in big organizations, they know Futuring now because we have pitched it that way there. And what I did, because I really love you. You must have also heard me saying ecosystem quite often. So what I did, and it's again the same point about bringing everything home, right? Because you can go crazy and do experiments, but at the end of the day, even for you as a human being, if it all makes sense and connects to each other, you are also at peace. So you are not opening 10,000 different accounts. You have 10,000 different streams, but it all comes to one lake or one ocean, right? So for that ecosystem was one thing I really was fascinated with. Like bigger companies who have ecosystems of products, right? Google has multiple ecosystems. Then you have Apple who has multiple ecosystems. So they have smartphones, then they have iMacs, then they have their iTunes, and then their app stores, and it's like a vast ecosystem. So it always fascinated me. So what I did is, back in the day when I was creating Futuring Now, I also created a brand called The Funning. It's one N instead of two because the domain wasn't available. But The Funning becomes the, let's say, mothership or the main company which runs everything. And then I connected Futuring Now to The Funning, connected the Fun Indian Guy personal brand to The Funning. We connected Daily Ish podcast to The Funning. So now The Funning becomes my main point where I'm running stuff from. So, right. So whatever I create in terms of project, that will be in the end connected to The Funning, and that makes it easier for me. And the keywords are the same: creativity, design, innovation, and lifestyle. And it goes well till now with everything, and that makes it easier to drive and also allocate certain time and have even mental clarity about what is happening for what. So that's what I have been planning to do, and then it entirely becomes an ecosystem. That's why you see Daily Spot coming from the same mothership. You have the Fun Indian YouTube videos coming from the same mothership. You have Project Thought article series coming from the same mothership. You have Futuring Now innovation company coming from the same mothership. And just, it's very interesting because once you know me right now, me, maybe in future we'll have multiple faces, and we'll have multiple touch points as well. uh, then it's very interesting for you because you're like, okay, I know Suyog, and these are his companies, and these are
Mm.
his projects. uh, and I've kept that clear since the beginning of it. Usually you see bigger content creators or bigger creators doing these things when they reach certain level. But just for the entrepreneurship of it, I've created it right now, so it's also easier for me to not wait till I reach certain audience size to create impact. I can already create impact.
Amazing. And so, what else is hidden in your Pandora's box? I mean, we have talked about so many versatile things. What else we can talk about which you are doing and I don't know, or which you are planning to do, which is not confidential also.
I don't know. Because of the some lifestyle choices which I made while I made decisions, I happen to have a lot of time on my hand. Even if it looks like there are too many things happening, I still have a lot of free time, and which is mindfully kept free to really explore things. And that was, so I was offered a job at Porsche back in the day, and any designer would have said, okay, Porsche is my first company to be working in. Like, people would potentially give anything to do that, right? Like, I also get a lot of inboxes about it, like, how can I get
Mhm.
job in Porsche? I was potentially offered a job there. Also, some discussions were happening about Volkswagen Group innovation, and I made a conscious decision that no, I don't want to go into it because I would like to still stay true to whatever I feel like doing, still making impact on it and creating different things. Because once you go into the corporate grind, you are consumed for a week, and you have very small space to think about different things. And that life works for some people. I'm not saying it's a very bad life. For me, it didn't make sense that time, and even right now, it's not still making any sense. Maybe in future things might change, I don't know. But I just felt that I like to do multiple things, and I need dedicated time so that I can do multiple things and not just keep these things as some stuff you did when you were young and crazy, right? So not like when I was doing engineering, I could play with a band, do things here, go around, hang
Mm.
out, have a relationship. You could do, but then you lose these things on the way, and you're like, okay, those days were super cool. But I didn't intentionally think about these things, but I was like, I want to have time and I want to drive what I want to do, and I should be able in position to make those decisions and not place them on the weekend. And that was a conscious decision. And luckily, because of that, I'm still into the lifestyle where even if we put out a lot of content, a lot of things everywhere, still have time for myself, for exploring, for reading a book, for watching a lot of discussions on YouTube, because those are the things which I'm passively picking up, which help me make better decisions or decide some new things. And I look at every possible medium, even live experiences, to be the sources to do things. So I intentionally go into things and keep grasping, because you never know what can click where. Because sometimes you are like, okay, that day I watched that and maybe that's a good thing to do, and I'll do that. So I keep space for those things to happen. This first year, or let's say last couple of years, where the challenge for my own self was to see if I can still create create opportunities for myself, that I make certain amount of money that I can sustain on my own, because I also got married last year, end of the last year. So I could manage on my own. And because of certain projects, I could get to that level, that now I know, okay, I have certain brand value and I can get certain projects, I can make good amount of money, decent amount, I wouldn't say amazing, decent amount of money to sustain. And that's now ticked. So I am more at peace, than I'm not trying to prove myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to just do stuff. So that has been the constant, like the ability and possibility to be able to, or let's say to do multiple things. That flexibility should be there. Yeah.
I see. And so, how have you evolved philosophically or decision wise when you say that you still have a lot of time? Do you use that time to polish the things which you are doing, or do you use the time to explore the things which you want to do?
It's not very organized. Though I keep seeing productivity videos, but doesn't work.
Hmm.
The thing about productivity is you should pick the productivity practices, practice them for a couple of weeks, and move on to the next practice, because you can't stick to one particular style. And if it just becomes too monotonous, then again you're losing creativity there. Whatever free time I have, it's actually not labeled as free. It's just that I'm either consuming some stuff
Hmm.
mindfully on internet, or I'm reading a book, or I'm doing something. There is no goal on it. The overall goal is to grasp whatever interesting topics you have, just go into it and just get information, listen to people talking about it, and just keep going back to the stuff which really resonated with you, because the amount of content you put in your head, you tend to forget also a lot of interesting things which you thought were valuable. So if you think something is valuable, if it's a podcast which was really valuable, go ahead and listen to it multiple times. That's fine. Like, you can go back to it, so you refresh that, okay, this was the concept. Because the amount of things we put into our head and amount of things we can take out, that the ratio is, it's a scam, because we are
Hmm.
not really, we're just getting injected with a lot of inspiration and motivation, but there is no enough outlet. So I try to balance that out. And yeah, mindfully keep consuming things. And then I have sessions with interns, sessions with friends. I talk about different ideas. If the idea is like, I have a practice about writing down and noting down ideas all the time. So it's not like I don't know what to do. It's just that, okay, this was interesting. Because the thing about idea, I had done a podcast about it, is like, certain ideas are triggered because of certain things you're going through. Maybe you watched a podcast, maybe you watched a documentary on Netflix. You had a wonderful day that day, you went out and had some amazing coffee at a cafe, you came home, you watched a certain documentary on Netflix, and then you had this crazy idea which you thought that could be interesting to do. That idea to reach your head had to go through a lot of different variables. It wasn't like just because you watched the Netflix thing, that's why you got the idea. It had a lot of other subconscious things, other life experiences thing, which had to align at that point for you to get that particular idea or a new thought. So I try to document it right then and there, because that had the authentic source. And I keep looking for these ideas, and that's why it's like I capture a lot of ideas, so that we have a library of things to do. And you can kind of utilize and use these triggers for creating some valuable stuff for yourself. It's like very meta level. It's not very action oriented, but I like to get into these things because it's like philosophically just, it's just amazing.
You have a knack of giving me leeways because whatever I want to ask next, you already started. So the next thing I wanted to ask is that these new and different and out of the box ideas, how do you develop it? Do you sit silently? Do you explore more things to get inspiration? Do you talk to people who you think can add on to your ideas?
Uh-huh.
So how do you develop these things?
Ideas in what sense, or any idea you mean?
So, just for an example, for giving me an example of concept, you gave me an example of an EV
Mm-hmm.
and food,
Mm-hmm.
and that came to you.
Right.
And this is okay. This is intuitive, but also it is a skill which people have to develop with experiences, with learning, with reading, and so on and so forth. How
Right.
do you do it?
So for the innovation ideas, as I said, we have methods. So ideas can be crazy, but those need some solid ground. It can't be like you can't invest a lot of money without really knowing what you're doing, right? Sometimes ideas sound cool, but they don't work. So for the innovation kind of ideas, when we get into ideations, then we are just crazy and putting extremist, like crazy things on the paper. But that has triggers of research and user insights and stuff. So that is a bit more organized, I would say, because you have to be efficient, as it also comes down to money and resources assigned to the project, and showing the company that this works, this doesn't work, and there needs to be a very focused learning. So those idea generations are a bit more structured. On the other hand, the content ideas or other ideas in my other ventures, uh, yeah, they just come, as I said, they just get triggered because of multiple things. And I don't go out and look for them, but whenever they
Mm-hmm.
come, I make sure I document them, because never know when you can use them. And again, it has, as I said, a lot of backgrounds to it, right? The life experiences which I had, the kind of books I've read, the kind of videos I watched this week, the podcast which I heard, the conversations which I had with my friends. That's good. Another thing is, it's interesting whenever you are talking about new concepts and new ideas, it's a great way to put it out there with in a group discussion with your friends. Because when you are trying to tell them, you are low key pitching them your ideas and you want them to
Mm-hmm.
like it. And in that conversation, just to get their attention, you experiment different storytellings, and you bring different points of view on the table, because you want them to be convinced. And with these activities, you kind of polish your ideas also and plans. So especially plans. Yesterday or last night also, I was talking to my bandmate, and we were talking about different plans and ideas. Bouncing it off also has a different important value to it, because isolation is not, you can't go anywhere with isolation.
Yeah, I think as you were saying that with experience and experience, I mean day-to-day experience and
Uh-huh.
whatever you are doing, everyone gets ideas. Only a few of them work on it or take it seriously. I think you are the one who is the latter kind, taking it seriously, those ideas, and then
Some of it, not all of them.
everybody cannot do all of them. Yeah, otherwise it will be like we are like rats running from here
Yeah.
and there. And last question I asked from you, because the whole podcast today we talked about creativity. What is
Mhm.
creativity word means to you personally? I know the meaning in dictionary. What is
Mhm.
for you personally? Creativity means.
Creativity. Yeah, it has a lot to do with being able to create. Um,
Okay, let me give you a detailed question then.
yeah.
Uh, what does creativity means to you in terms of that you are making something new, which
Mhm.
is totally out of the box and is revolutionary in nature? Or
Mhm.
if creativity is for you, which you want to create something very beautiful, which has already been done, but for someone to see it, experience it, or listen to it, whatever the
Right.
mode of consuming it is. So all in all, is do you do it for consumer, or do you do it just for the brilliantness of that particular idea?
Right. So I think it boils down to what problem are you trying to solve, and that guides the challenge. And the challenge gives you trigger to solve it in a creative manner. The level changes as per the demand, right? If it's for me to have fun while recording a podcast and I'm just bored of sitting now, what should I do? Then I'm pushing my creativity and maybe standing up and doing it. But the trigger there was the problem that, okay, I'm getting bored sitting down and talking to the camera. How can I elevate it? In terms of giving experiences, or people are listening to multiple podcasts, how can I elevate them? Then the problem is people are bored with going through multiple podcasts. Then it's easier for me to focus my creativity and get some output, right? Because creativity is very subjective, it can be anything for anyone.
Mhm.
But it should be derived from a problem which gives you a challenge, because then it's more focused and more structured, and you know what you're doing. And when you know what you're doing, your creativity is focused on solving something and not open ended. It's not like sitting at a window and saying, okay, what, that's all. No, why needs to be the first, right? Like, why should we do it, and how might we solve this particular problem for somebody? And that derives and that triggers the right process. And processes are important because they just make the whole thing more efficient, and you get to the final outcome quicker than other ways. So creativity for me is first finding the problems, looking at them as problems and challenges, and then applying different things which I know to get to the possible outcome. And yeah, that's basically it. Even for artists, right? If they are creating an art, there is always a problem. They want to either express something which is happening in the social economical sector. They have very strong feelings about a woman, so they want to write a poetry about it. That's the problem, right? Okay, I have a strong feeling about this woman who doesn't get me, or who is with somebody else, or who I used to date and we broke up, but I feel very sad about it. That's the problem. Now the challenge is, how might I express those feelings in form of a poetry? That's a very superficial level, but you understand, right? Then because of that, you are actually writing a poem. It's not because you just randomly sat and wrote poet. There was a
Hmm.
trigger for it. So focusing on the problems more, so that you can get the best output and you can focus your creativity, which you anyway do. It's not like this, because I'm saying the steps, that's how you will perform. Most of the things are kind of triggered that way, just that I'm just putting them in a bucket.
I was smiling because as soon as I thought of a question to ask you, you said it. I was just going to ask you that do you think yourself as an artist or as a content creator? And
Uh,
you give me that example of the artist.
but I'm more like I would say I would call myself a creator, because as I said, no, we are solving problems, and I'm trying to do it on different mediums and platforms because it's just interesting for me. Artist sometimes, okay, so to have a clear distinction, as I said, no, every creativity is derived from the problem. It's just happens that most of the times the artists are talking about their own problems in a
Huh.
creator's way, or where I stand. I don't know how to label it, but where I stand, I'm also thinking about others' problem more, being a designer also. So
That's what I was trying
that
to
is a
ask.
differentiation between like the kind of things I'm creating and the kind of thing an artist would create. Because if I was an artist, I wouldn't have given a damn about having keywords and focusing on certain things. I would have just made a video about whatever I want to make video about, right? So those are the clear distinctions between. And that's also a battle, or let's say a conversation which always happens with designers. Like, is design art? Design is not art, because design is derived by the problems people are facing, and it's about people and it's not about you.
I think your engineering background made you start the creative process from finding a problem first. I think, and maybe you are an artist in finding the problems, and then you become a creator to solve them, I guess. So I
The
don't.
thing is, engineering, just because you brought the engineering point, the engineers are problems with engineers is, engineers see the problem and they know how to solve it, and they think that's the ultimate way of solving it, and they just focus on that particular specific problem. That is what I got out of engineering. Engineering gave me confidence that I can learn things overnight, because we prepared for so many exams overnight. So I had a certain confidence that if you tell me to learn this particular skill, like animate this video, even if I don't know animation, I'll learn animation overnight and deliver some certain quality. What designer changed, what design philosophy changed me as a person, how design, the whole design thing changed me as a person, is basically, if I see a problem, the first thing I should do is think about the problem, zoom out, and see the bigger picture first, instead of going for a solution. Because
Mhm.
solving a problem is easy, anybody can do it. But is solving that problem is going to have a better impact? Maybe not. Maybe the overall system is flawed. So you have to think about the overall system. So that's why, as a designer, I got immense patience about not solving things right away, because anybody can solve. Anybody can come up with a quick idea about solving something, right? But the overall understanding about what is the bigger problem, why is it happening, is it a cultural thing? Because sometimes it's culture, and engineering cannot solve cultural problems. So you have to really zoom out and see why certain things are happening. Is it a Indian behavior of people or something like that? And then trying to, as I said, open it up and then close it down again, and then come up with possible solutions. Because finding an idea and solution is, it's the easiest thing of the process. Finding the
And
right problem is important when it comes to
how
these kind of things. Yeah.
how do you hunt for the problems?
Various methods. You zoom out first, understand, you talk to people who are facing the problem, right? So uh, let's take an example of a logistic company who has truck drivers who wants to go from point A to point B, and you are saying that we need to upgrade to better trucks, because these trucks are just not fast enough, and our deliveries are always late. And it's just, even if after having a very digitized ecosystem, it's just creating a lot of pain point. And that's why we need to get better trucks and maybe have also better drivers, because these drivers are maybe not very versed with the technical stuff. That's the problem. One might say, okay, let's change the trucks, change the drivers. You change the drivers, that was a bit easier than changing the trucks, and still the problem persists. This happened because you immediately came to conclusion that the problem was with the drivers. But when you really zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, talk to drivers, understand what is happening, why you're late, what is the challenge for you, why is it getting tough for you to go from point A to point B. Turns out your app was not working well,
Mm.
which you gave to them. You install a very fancy tab on their deck or on the dashboard of the car or the truck, and apparently the app is not working well. So in that case, you will again immediately go and say change the app, but no, again you have to go deeper. What things in the app are not working? Maybe it's just one button of navigation which never works. Maybe the API which they use for the maps is not the most efficient map in India. It works perfect in US, but because we source the software from US, the map is not working well for Indian standards. So you have to really zoom in, zoom in, zoom out to get to the real problem. And then the problem was just changing the API and getting Google Maps. That could have saved you a lot of money, because you already changed the drivers, you already wasted a lot of time, wasted some money, and you were also potentially going to change the app altogether. So this is a very, very random example I'm trying to give you, but just to give you
But
the
I
context, you have
understand.
to zoom in, zoom out to really get to the real problem which is causing it, and then trying to understand how can we solve it. Because it can also be that the positioning of the tab was on the right side and it was coming behind the steering wheel, so the person was not able to see. Just changing the position of the tab to a more visible side can also be easy. Or it can be the brightness of the app, the because the thing is, when you have a lot of light from the main windshield, you're not able to, because the tab is fixed at a certain angle, you're not able to see the screen, and it's just reflections, and then
Mm.
you can't see and do all these things, and those things are getting involved. And there can be anything, right? Even the education to give to drivers how to use that. So yeah, but to get to that level, to understand exact point, you have to zoom in, zoom out, and explore the problem a bit more. Because always whenever a client comes to you and says this is the problem, 80% of the times that's not the problem, but that's what they want to get better at, but that's not the problem you are trying to solve.
Amazing, Suyog. And I guess that your decision to make Suyog Rispert as a brand is the perfect decision. And I'm going to say why. Because you are doing so many things. And if you go and try to make everything a brand, it would be very difficult. Better make yourself a brand. And yeah, I hope that your brand becomes the Suyog Rispert brand becomes. By the way, your surname Risbert is quite cool. I think everyone in college used to call you Risbert. Come here.
It's
So
actually Risbird, but people used to think Risbird. Some people said Rosewood. It was quite weird.
awesome. So
It's not very
good.
common.
And yeah, hope your brand becomes quite big and amazing in very near future. Anything else you want to tell me and my viewers here before we close this podcast?
Yeah, like keep experimenting things, whatever works, stick to it. If it gets boring, change it a bit and keep building. Like, and try to think that everything you do in your life is part of the bigger narrative. So don't get too focused on smaller things, because they are not relevant if you go ahead and look back. Like the 10th exam which you gave was
Hmm.
extremely important back then, not anymore.
Exactly. I think now everybody is passing, so it is not important anymore for next
Yeah.
generations at all, at least. So, yeah, I think we can close this podcast now. And viewers, as I always say, that if you like this video, like it and comment down below. Tell me what you think about the whole channel for that matter, and this video particularly. And thank you, Soyog, for coming on the arrow. And
Okay.
wish you all the best. And please follow this guy. All the links of his Instagram and his website and YouTube channel I will put down in the description, and
Awesome.
go follow this guy. So adios, bye bye.
Ciao.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.